Hello, welcome, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone, depending where you are. So we are here back again for our every Tuesday and Thursday session. So it's a bi weekly session with our family Connect Africa member here, Guame Gonza, our Pan African analyst. Uh, so today, our topic for today is actually to analyze the recent security meetings, the African Union transition mission in Somalia, or it's known in its abbreviation ATMIS. And then one other topic we are going to cover as well is the Ibrahim governance weekend, the Mo Ibrahim governance weekend conference in Nairobi that just happened also a few days ago. We try to cover back to back those topics. So those of you who are not part of or family of Connect Africa, please subscribe because we do this every Tuesday and Thursday. We also have other things that we do on the ground as well, which we later on we are going to let you know. But for now, welcome, Kwame.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Greetings to everyone who's watching Connect Africa. We would like to thank you for being part of this program, which happens every Tuesday and Thursday. It is very important that you stay with us and you support us on this journey which we are on. The journey is about enlightening and informing Africans about what is really happening behind closed doors. That is the purpose of the analysis which we do on events, on the particular events that are happening, not only on the continent, but also around the globe. And so, if you are not subscribed to the channel, try and subscribe to the channel, like what you watching, like the content that we are publishing every Tuesday and Thursday, and comment down in the section, and contribute and let us know which other topic you think that we have not spoken about or you want us to speak about. With that being said, the topics which we are going to touch today, an event which happened in Uganda, recently, a few days ago, actually, which was last week. President Museveni of Uganda hosted the particular regional leaders who are contributing to the African Union peacekeeping mission in Somalia, or you can say peace stabilizing a mission in Somalia, where we have a group of military personnel who are part of the African Union, peace standby force that is contributing to peace in Somalia, so that Somalia can stabilize and bring its own government. So those countries were invited to Kampala, Entebbe State House, which is the official residence of office of the president of Uganda. So to have a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to understand why what is behind also this conversation that the president was inviting the other leaders of the region to talk about, because amidst this, we are seeing a lot of things which are going on across the globe. We are seeing the war and chaos and conflict in Sudan. At the same time, we are seeing on the world stage, there's a lot of things which are going on, and the world is changing, is moving in a different direction. So we want to examine, is there, apart from the issue of Somalia, is there any other issue behind this? So that is what we are going to, to talk about. So stick with us. The other thing which we want to talk about is the conference, like Mahlet rightly mentioned, the Mo Ibrahim governance, meeting so you can call it a weekend, more Ibrahim governance weekend, which happens every year actually. It happens every year on in different parts of the African continent. Mo Ibrahim, for those of you who don't know him, he's an African tycoon with his roots in Sudan. He is the founder actually of what we see today as Airtel, a mobile network, which has branches, which is all over the African continent. He founded it, way back in the 90s. It was called Celtel during that time, but he would later sell that telecommunication network to Bharti of India. So Airtel right now is owned by Indians, but he is the one who formed that telecommunication network. And when he sold it, he got a lot of money. So he has been dedicating himself in the past years after selling Airtel to trying to improve the governance situation on the African continent. He has been very outspoken on numerous cases. He doesn't, he hates, if I may say, he hates political correctness, even when you hear him speaking in his meetings, which he holds all over across the African continent. He tries to get, the statements. He tries to get statements from information from a straight point of view, saying it, you can say like saying it like it is. So he tries to speak to leaders so that they can say it like it is without, political, correctness. So these are the events which we want to examine. So what was it that was spoken about at this, conference or meeting, the Mo Ibrahim weekend meeting that happens every year? What was spoken about? And these events are very important. There was a couple of leaders. There was President Ruto, who was almost sort of like a keynote speaker. The Vice President of Nigeria was there, or His Excellency Osibanjo, and then President Yusuf of Niger also was there, and a couple of other dignitaries like the diplomats from the African Union, for example, Musa Faki, who was there, His Excellency Musa Faki, who was the chairperson of the African Union Commission. So we want to examine what was spoken about on behalf of Africa, and what was the position, the main position that was being pushed at this a meeting that happened in Nairobi at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, the KICC, in Nairobi. So thank you very much. With that being said, Mahlet, I'll give you back the microphone.
Thank you, Kwame. You kind of given us a background on those topics that we are going to talk about. So without further ado, I think it's better to go straight to the question. One more thing just to add on Mo Ibrahim is that he's a person who initiated actually, giving a prize for those leaders, actually a money prize and just a recognition award for African leaders who leave power peacefully, who transition power peacefully as well. I find it a very interesting transition, though we don't see so much of the leaders competing for that or having appetite for that. But it's an interesting initiative. I also say we go ahead and own also our own peace prize as opposed to what's happening, what Oslo is having. But that's another topic for us. That's one of the things, that we do on the ground, as we say. So stick with us. We'll let you know. Now, so recently, the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia, or ATMIS conference, has been held in Kampala, which is basically to talk about, those countries who contribute forces in peacekeeping mission for Somalia, whether it continues or not beyond its mandate. I mean, its mandate stands. It will end on 31st December of 2024. There is a talk and there is a denial. Also, there is a talk that the Somalia president himself requested the Ugandan president to host this meeting, and it's based on that this meeting was facilitated by or hosted by President Museveni. But also he pulled, President Museveni pulled these East African leaders, including, Burundi, Ethiopia, Kenya, Djibouti, and Somalia itself, and of course the host country. He hosted them in its in a palace. So some say there's another motive behind this. It's not just security issue of Somalia. That's a kind of a face value we are getting, but there's a deeper thing. So Kwame, can you please comment on the recent security summit in Kampala? What do you think of the leaders are trying to achieve? What is going on behind the closed door?
Thank you, Mahlet. Thank you very much. I think that, of course, as rightly mentioned, as the purpose of this meeting, I think let me even first hear what this gentleman is saying, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Uganda, what he's saying, then we'll pick it from there.
Of Somalia in forced generation, regeneration, and integration as a major component to take over security responsibilities from African Union Transition Mission in Somalia by December 2024. The summit further called for the increased logistical support to the smallest security forces and extend the scope to reflect the realities on the ground. The summit recalled the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions to adopt a strategic, gradual, and sector-by-sector approach to the drawdown and review assessment of security and performance of the African Transition Mission in Somalia. The summit reiterated the importance of force protection and survivability, including the provision of force multipliers and enablers, especially aviation support. The summit called for an early joint assessment and planning for drawdown process of the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia.
Yeah, so that is it. You think you can put it off. So the presidents, particular presidents, of course, were invited. Kenya, Uganda was at the summit. Ethiopia also is a contributing member to the African Union mission in Somalia. Burundi is a contributing member, and from this also we can see that Djibouti also was present, and so there was a discussion for handing over the responsibility, the peace responsibility to Somalia for keeping the peace in the nation. In the past, these militaries, of course, they have been engaged in training the security systems of Somalia. Some of them, like the soldiers of the army of Somalian police, have been trained by the Uganda security systems, like the military. And so this is what we are seeing that they are trying to achieve. But also, we see that the security situation in Sudan necessitated this. But let me first go back a little bit on this. At this summit, this security summit which happened, or security summit on Somalia, there was also the United Nations was present. The African Union also was present at this, so that because all these have a responsibility in making sure that the mission in Somalia is successful, because they are contributing members, like the United Nations and major, of course, the African Union. So the representative of the African Union Commission, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki, was there. The representative, his representative, was there to to take back the information. But these are head of states. They came together. So what we were seeing is that they came together at a time when we have a conflict in Sudan, which conflict and affects majority of these countries, which have come together to talk about this security, regional security. Whether you're talking about Djibouti, Ethiopia. Ethiopia has even been taking in some of the refugees from Sudan and even providing its airspace and airfields and airports to fly out, people who are running out of Sudan and being withdrawn from Sudan, the various countries. You can talk of Uganda, you can talk of Kenya. All these, they are neighbors in the region that they have to pay attention to this situation that is happening here. So I believe that this is one of the things that was handled. This is one of the things that was discussed at this meeting, because it is very important. I know that this was not put out there, that it was discussed, but I believe that the players, because they understand who are the players in this conflict, that we have foreign interests which are affecting, influencing, the war in Sudan. So it was important for them to have a discussion on this. And actually, they mentioned it. They mentioned that they had a discussion on it. They touched on it, but only that they didn't say what exactly they discussed about this conflict. And this also fits in very well with the situation, with Ethiopia's situation, with Egypt also. That Ethiopia has for some time now, for a few years in the back, it has had some friction. It has had some friction with Egypt, and so I believe that also the foreign minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, brought it up so that they can discuss it. And this is a good sign, actually, that the regional leaders are able to come together and discuss the future or the security situation of the region, which we have not seen in a while. We have not seen in other regions, for example, SADC or Maghreb, Central African region. We have not seen this kind of coming together by leaders to discuss their the security situation in their various regions. So I believe that this is a very good sign that the leaders were able to come together, and discuss the situation. If they could discuss further on a continental, take these matters on a continental level, which we as Pan-Africans are advocating for, I believe that would be also very important. And that, of course, should include the withdrawal of foreign forces which are occupying the continent, France, the United States, Germany, and all these groups that have troops stationed on the African continent. I think that this should be a very huge concern, in the same way that the leaders are seeing that the situation in the East and Horn of Africa, in the eastern part and of Africa and the Horn of Africa, deserves attention. The leaders think that this deserves their attention. I think it is in the same way they should pay attention to whatever is happening across the continent of Africa, all the continent, because this continent belongs to us. So I believe that we should not leave out even 1 inch. When 1 inch of the continent is under instability, we should all pay attention, to what is going on there. So this is what I see with what is going on with this conflict or this summit. What happened with this summit, in regard to the conflict in Somalia, destabilization in Somalia, and then the conflict in Sudan, and then the relationship between Ethiopia and Egypt, and then the general situation on the continent and how we should approach it. So it is a good step towards the right direction.
Indeed, thank you very much, Kwame, for that. It's really, it's an impressive and encouraging for us as people of the Eastern African region, but at large as an African, to see coming, the leaders together to discuss the security issue or whatever is concerning the region, and try to find that solution without any intervention from the West, usually who think themselves as a savior and try to jump in. If it's, I wonder if this was happening. I mean, the region is so fragile, in the greater Horn of Africa, or you can the typical Horn of Africa, whatever it is called. It's a very fragile region and very strategical place as well in geopolitics. If this was happening in Western Africa, mostly we see that France jumping into the country without bringing their force, without any consultation with the African Union, or maybe perhaps they did, we don't know, but we don't see.
Yeah.
Without
Actually,
statements from the African Union, you would see French soldiers in Western
yes,
African
yes,
states. So
yes. Actually,
achieve it or not, as a principle, it's
mm,
really important for
mm.
them to come together. Yeah, just I will allow you to quickly reflect on that, and we move to the second question. Yeah.
Yes. So actually, coming in on that note, the East African countries, actually, what we are seeing is that they have a certain level of autonomy in action.
Mhm.
And that means they have a certain level of independence, which majority of the West African countries don't have. So you have, if you listen, for example, to President Ruto when he's speaking, when he was speaking over the weekend on Saturday during the more Ibrahim, governance weekend, at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, you can feel that he has a certain level of autonomy and independence. Even when you look at people like Suluhu, President Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, you could see that President Magufuli was able to come and do a lot of things, a lot of independence. So the East African countries and the Horn of Africa, they have a certain level of independence. Like, for example, look at Eritrea, is almost completely independent, that it doesn't depend on anybody. You can go to Ethiopia. But what is lacking now in that independence is the use of that independence. Actually, both of them, I can mention the East African countries and the South African countries. You go to countries like Zimbabwe, in South Africa, you have seen how South Africa, even though it is in the midst of neo-colonialism, corporations and business and stuff like that, capitalism, neo-colonial businesses, but still the politicians, they have a certain level of autonomy that they are able to assert themselves. So what we want to see is the translation of that autonomy into action that benefits the African people. So that is what is lacking. That is what we are not seeing. There's a confusion on what should be done, and I've seen that on numerous times with President Museveni, for example. He is confused on what a Pan-Africanism is, even though he mentions it as one of the pillars of his organization, which is the National Resistance, movement, or which is the NRM, the party which governs Uganda. He has a confusion about what Pan-Africanism is. His interpretation of Pan-Africanism is problematic, that it doesn't really reflect what Pan-Africanism is. Pan-Africanism, from the founders, our forefathers who founded it, Marcus Garvey, Edward, Blyden, Wilmot Blyden from the United States, Marcus Garvey, of course, from the Caribbean, Kwame Nkrumah from our own very continent. It meant Africans coming together. But there is a certain way in which President Museveni limits Pan-Africanism to be a regional issue, that is only concentrating his efforts, to East Africa. And even in some cases, he has stood in the way of the progress of Pan-Africanism, like when it comes to cases where President Muammar Gaddafi was advancing Pan-Africanism so fast, the unification of the continent. But he decided to move in a different opposite direction to which President Muammar Gaddafi was moving, and oppose him even. But the same person on one side sometimes comes and says that Africans, when you look at them all over the continent, can only be grouped in four languages, language groups. We have only 4 language groups, even though we have more than 2,000 languages. But those 4 languages can only be grouped in 4 groups. So this means that on one side, he's recognizing the importance of unification of Africa as a continent. But on one side, he's conflicted and says that it is not possible to unite Africa because it requires a common language. So you can see that he has a country like Uganda, which has more than 40 tribes, and some of the languages actually are not related, but he's holding it together. But he's on one side standing up against the unification of the whole African continent, but then on one side, he's pushing for the unification of East Africa. So I think that he's a confused president, either consciously or unconsciously. He's confused about what Pan-Africanism is, and that becomes a block. That becomes a stumbling block. I know that you wanted to talk about him, on a more greater scale, but I think we can take it from there. I know you may had another question regarding President Museveni, but this is where I see him. So this autonomy which we are seeing in East Africa has not been translated into the rapid unification. The autonomy we are seeing in East and Southern part of Africa is not being transformed or translated into a strong union that would defend the interests of Africa, because certain leaders in these regions still have that selfish mentality that they have to cling onto power. And that, as Pan-Africanists, I think is going to be a very big problem for us to face. And we'll speak on it actually when we come to what Mo Ibrahim was talking about, because Mo Ibrahim is someone who is also very convinced that the unification of Africa into a political force, and with one body, one president representing us, is going to bring much more good than the various weak presidents and selfish people who we have across the continent, and they are not advancing the interests of the African continent as they should be advanced. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame. That indeed, actually, you have touched in a great deal of my second question in this topic, still with regards to the security meeting in Kampala, particularly concerning President Museveni. That was, as you said, yes, I really wanted to focus on him and to get your view on that. As you rightly said, President Museveni is known, Yoweri Museveni is known for his controversial comments. Sometimes you see him Pan-African, sometimes it's just thrown out of the window and he's completely talking something else, or maybe intervening in neighboring countries' business, which we don't know the detail, but from the look of it, you kind of question his moves. And he's also, he's getting old, probably the eldest or the oldest of one of the oldest, let me say, of the African leaders, the existing African leaders right now. And he's in the middle of, as many, also the Ugandans, several Ugandan analysts would agree with me, is kind of preparing his elder son, who's a General Muzi, to take power. Yeah, we see him a lot engaged in so many that seem Pan-African activities, but sometimes also he's accused of his meddling in Congo and his relation with Rwanda. In any case, do you think that President Museveni is serious with his Pan-African goals?
So
Just walk us through his thoughts.
yeah, I really don't see his seriousness very much, because if you apart from like making comments, you see, when you go back to the 1960s, you had leaders who were committed to Pan-Africanism, that they were not staying in their countries and making comments and sitting down. You can talk of people like Kwame Nkrumah, of course, the foremost, Pan-Africanist on our continent. Haile Selassie, when there were conflicts on the continent, Haile Selassie was, trying to bring groups together when the Pan-African movement broke into two, and we had the Casablanca and the Monrovia group. Haile Selassie tried to bring these together to Addis Ababa. And of course, this is what led to the formation of the Organization of African Unity. And we had Nkrumah, who was all over, he was in the Congo, even the Ghana Armed Forces, was sent to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So these were people, Ahmed Sekou Toure, when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in Ghana, invited, Nkrumah to be a co-president in Guinea. So these were really Pan-Africanists who were involved, even to a certain extent. Nyerere himself, you could see that after Nkrumah was removed from power, Nyerere was left, that Nyerere was intervening all over, whether he's in Zambia, Rhodesia, which is currently Zimbabwe, South Africa. He became sort of almost like the spokesperson of the African struggle. And he was coordinating, they were coordinating these efforts for decolonization, whether it is Mozambique, Malawi. So they were pushing forward in that direction. But majorly, Nkrumah, the best example in this case should be Nkrumah. So when Nkrumah set a bar on which I think set the yardstick, he is the yardstick on which we should measure the other African leaders on whether their Pan-Africanism is real or is hollow, is empty Pan-Africanism that they are pushing. So it is on that yardstick. When you put that yardstick and measure Museveni on that, you really don't see any, you don't see where he has been strong, that he is assertive on a Pan-African scale, because he has limited himself on around the East African region to try to influence issues there. But even after 30 years of being there, he has not still been able, even though he helped to revive the defunct East African community, he has not been able to push it as fast as possible. I know they have pushed, of course, the joining of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the joining of Rwanda, the joining of Sudan, and of course Somalia also is unobserved and is trying to. It has applied to join, but apart from that, going across, being concerned about what is happening in the western part of the continent, being concerned what is happening in the Sahel, and also the fact that he stood up against President Muammar Gaddafi, who was pushing for the unification of the continent and a single military. And even recently, he made some remarks and said that Nkrumah was just an idealist. It is not possible. It is not possible to unify the continent because we have different languages. And as I mentioned before to you, on one side, he says that we have only 4 groups of languages, so we are the same as Africans. But on the other side, he says that it is not possible. Even amidst the advent of this technology, that it is not, you can't say that it's not possible for us to unite on account of the many languages, when we have all this technology that has come, that it can translate, languages can be translated in a blink of an eye. So I think that is an argument that does not really hold water. And to me, it also looks like he has not read, he did not take time to read Nkrumah and Nkrumah's ideas and what Nkrumah wrote down. I think he did not take time to read what Nkrumah wrote down. President Museveni is a big follower of President Julius Nyerere, the late Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. But Nyerere himself, by the time he died, he had actually transformed himself into a follower of Nkrumah, because he said that when Nkrumah died, he took 10 years to read Nkrumah's work to be able to understand what Nkrumah had planned for the continent. So for him to be able to understand, he said that it took him 10 years to understand what Nkrumah was saying in the 60s. And that is when Nkrumah had gone. Nkrumah died in 1972. So Nyerere took 10 years until 1982 to read all Nkrumah's work to be able to understand what Nkrumah was trying to plan for the continent. And Nyerere came to Accra and admitted that Nkrumah was right. We should have united the continent a long time ago. And yet Nyerere was the opponent of an immediate unification of the continent. You see, so that's the position which Museveni has taken, because he's a big follower of Nyerere. But unlike Nyerere, Museveni has not transcended Nyerere's position, because Nyerere by 1997 came to Accra and said Nkrumah was right. We should have united this continent a long time in the 1960s. Museveni has not transcended that Nyerere who had outgrown the type of Nyerere who was an opponent to Nkrumah's idea. So this is where I see that Museveni's Pan-Africanism is really lacking, and I think that he needs to come clear so that he can stop creating confusion. But what I see is that he's creating a lot of confusion, as if he's on the African side, and on one side he's standing for his own side, as if he's against the imperialists, and on one side, he's pushing his own personal interests so that he can be able to cling to power. So this is what I see about President Museveni as a person.
Thank you, Kwame. Really, that explains it a lot, and we will leave. Of course, our job or our purpose is really to bring you that a research-based analysis based on what's happening in the continent or globally that relates to Africa, and give it that Pan-African perspective to it. But the judgment at the end of the day will be your own. So it's a kind of education. It's bringing you information, not really selecting from different media outlets, but by reading and doing a good research on those topics. Now we move to our second topic for today, that we said concerning the governance conference, the Mo Ibrahim governance conference that was just held in Nairobi over the weekend. So with that, Mo Ibrahim, in the beginning, Kwame gave us a very good background of who he is for those of us who don't know. So related to that, he's a business mogul, and he's very influential, and politically and business-wise in various terms. He's a global icon. But of course, a son of African. He's an African. Now, what do you think? Give us, on this meeting, what the highlight of the meeting in this conference was that the viral video commented by President William Ruto regarding, the era of, maybe I'm paraphrasing it, the era of African leaders being summoned by one leader outside of Africa is gone. Is that so, really? And this seems actually more than a talk. thing. I mean, he mentioned that he has discussed it on a one-to-one basis with President Kagame, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and others, and then the African Union leadership itself, and many seems to agree with this initiative, and kind of actually they decided, I think that's the word he used, decided. So now, what do you what do you comment on this viral video? I mean, comment of President Ruto, because sometimes, as we say, we just talked about President Museveni, we see our leaders giving us that Pan-African speech or interview, whatever it is, when they have that platform to speak to the global space. But on the other hand, we see them doing some controversial things. Not that I find one in President Ruto, but just, yeah, give us your comments on this, Kwame. Back to you.
Thank you, Mahlet. Actually, I found the video. If you allow me, let me play that video when President Ruto was making those comments, so that our viewers can be able also to understand what we are talking about.
Our boys go and do the fight, but we need helicopters. We need.
Let me say this more.
Yeah.
Let me say this to save our face.
Yeah.
That
You started this, not me.
Yes. We have a challenge, and the positive thing is that there is a realization that it cannot continue this way.
What you gonna do? How you gonna fix the African Union?
It cannot continue this way.
How are you gonna fix it?
We have what it takes to fix it, and the conversation is already begun on what do we realistically do to be able to get the African Union to take charge of the affairs of our continent. Let me give you a case in point. We decided, for example, that we are going to assemble our market using the Africa Continental Free Trade Area market.
Yes, that's good.
Ecosystem.
Yeah.
And the positive thing is that it was unbelievable at the rate at which we were able to achieve consensus, and we were able to achieve ratification. And I want to tell you, it is among the things that happened in the shortest time possible. It tells you there is greater realization that unless we act in concert, unless we act together, we are unlikely to make any impact anywhere.
How many African presidents are on board?
We have, at least on the market issue, we have put that together. There is a debate that is going to evolve. Like, for example, we have also decided that it will not going to be business as usual. We have these meetings, Africa, US meeting, Africa, Europe, Africa, Africa, India. Now we are waiting for, there is another one, Africa, Russia.
And Africa, Japan.
And Africa, Japan. We have made the decision that it is not intelligent for 54 of us to go and sit before one gentleman from another place. And I mean, and sometimes we are mistreated.
Yeah.
You know, we are loaded into buses like school kids. You know, and it's not right.
Well, you are summoned. You know,
it's not right. So the decision that we have made as AU is that going forward, if there is going to be a discussion between Africa and any other country, we are going to be represented by the chair, the outgoing chair, the bureau.
chair of the commission,
and,
or the chair,
and the chair of the Rex, and we have 5 Rex. That should be sufficient for, I mean, a meeting of maybe 6-7,
Yeah.
That should be able to represent Africa. And that is the position I am taking as the president of Kenya.
Yeah. So yes. Yeah, Mahlet, can you hear me?
We hear you. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, so I hope you have heard him very well.
Yes.
So that was the position, that was the highlight actually of the whole meeting, the whole conference, or you can call it summit or whatever, the Mo Ibrahim annual meeting, which happens across the African continent. It happens in anywhere on the African continent. Countries are just chosen. Sometimes they take it here, sometimes they take it there. Yeah, so that was the highlight. But what I realized is that Mo Ibrahim is very concerned about the state of the African continent and how it is being led. Not only how it is being led, but how Africa is not making progress the way it should. And the reason being the leadership, that the leadership are not representing the continent the way it should. Why? Is because of the selfishness and the clinging on to power, that this clinging on to power has led them to sort of have a second colonization of the continent. And by this second colonization, I mean that they have failed to transcend the colonial mindset, that they are still holding on to the colonial territories as if they are, I think they use the word sacrosanct. You see, the word is called sacrosanct. So these colonial territories, like, they are sacrosanct. They cannot be broken. You see, and so this has held Africa backwards. So what they are protecting actually has instead come back to hurt us as Africans, because there's nothing they are protecting. And what they are protecting, we are not the ones who are benefiting from that kind of protection. We are instead being hurt. The people who are benefiting, they are the ones who colonized these territories, who came and divided. So we should come up with our own project, and that is the project which Nkrumah, proposed, that we should unify the continent, have one representative. Why do we have 55 representatives at the United Nations? We should have one African to speak for us, all of us. And in this, we will get the respect that we deserve as Africans. We should have one African to negotiate with the European Union. We should not have a country like Togo. We should not send like Togo with 5 or 6 million people and a GDP of 4 billion to go and negotiate with the European Union with more than $14 trillion, because it's not going to get a good deal. And this has been said numerous times, again and again and again. So you just don't understand why these leaders, they cannot understand a simple thing. So this is what was disturbing Mo Ibrahim, and he was asking, he was prodding President Ruto to try to understand this. That he doesn't really understand these people. That a simple thing to do, which will bring gains to the African people, they are not doing it. So he's saying that even though Ruto has made these statements, that they have committed themselves, they have made a decision to have the African Union empowered, to give power to the African Union. Of course, President Ruto recognized that the African Union doesn't have power, at this meeting, that the African Union the African Union Commission, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, can only do so much, because all the power is enshrined in the heads of state, in the various heads of state across. So the power is scattered all over the continent. So now that scattered power is not effective. So it is necessary to gather this power and enshrine that power, give it to one person to represent the continent. That is the only way we can be effective. And that will help us to block off the people who are disrespecting us, to the people who are exploiting us. Because now, there's no way they will bully a person who is representing 1.4 billion people. They will instead be begging us. And this is what we have been mentioning. This is what Nkrumah was mentioning in the 1960s. This is what Mo Ibrahim, even today, is mentioning. So President Ruto spoke about this, that the idea of moving leaders, 55 moving all over and going to Europe to meet the European Union, going to India to meet President Modi, 55 people, going to the US meeting Joe Biden or Obama, going to Turkey meeting President Erdogan, going to Russia to meet President Putin, 55 people. He said that this is disrespectful to the African heads of state. And it is good that they themselves realize this, because even though they have been enjoying, or they are enjoying all the good things of what this leadership brings, the leadership of the various states where they are on the continent, we, the African people, are the ones who have actually endured the humiliation the most, the humiliation of the weakness of the African continent, the African diaspora, George Floyd, Sandra Bland, who are being shot. These people all are suffering and enduring the humiliation of the Africans because of the behavior, a simple behavior of the African heads of state, that they don't want to come together and protect the interests of the African people. So this is what Mo Ibrahim was speaking about. And President Ruto mentioned that he has spoken to President Kagame, as you rightly mentioned. He has spoken, I believe, of course, he has also spoken to President Museveni. He has spoken to, the Prime Minister, Ahmed Ali, and they all agree with this. Of course, these some of these meetings, like for example, the burial of the Queen, people like Prime Minister Abiy was not there. I know that he could not allow himself, like how the president of Ethiopia could not allow herself to be packed in that, that bus. So there is a realization that we have to move in a different direction as Africans. And that is simply because of the changing world order, which we have been speaking about for many times here also, that the United States losing power requires us as Africans to reevaluate our situation, reevaluate our continent also, and start carrying ourselves in a new way, being responsible as a people, being responsible for the whole continent, not being responsible just for the region like East Africa or the Horn of Africa. We have to be responsible for the whole continent, because if you want to be responsible, you are an African, you want to be responsible for the East African region, whom do you want to leave the rest of the continent? Do you want to leave it for the Americans and the Europeans? You want to leave it for the Indians? If you want to do this, then the Indians, they will take over. And you can't complain that they have taken over the continent.
Exactly.
The French have taken over 13 countries in the western part of the continent. You can't blame them if you, Museveni, you are there arguing and rationalizing with all kind of petty, rationalities, and telling us how languages are plenty and this and this. But the French don't see that. They are able to cover up 13 countries. They are not bringing that petty. I mean, this is petty reasoning, actually. Absolutely petty reasoning, which has blocked some of these leaders off from seeing the reality that our continent, is facing, and they are engaging in what I call, or what Dr. Claude Anderson calls, inappropriate behavior. So I think that President Ruto, with that position, which he said they are taking, the various leaders on the continent are taking, I think this is what the African people have been crying for, because for a long time, Africans have been saying, when will our continent be strong? When will our leaders respect themselves? Because if they respect themselves, that respect will be reflected, on us. And then Mo Ibrahim also mentioned the issue of respect for the African Union. If you don't respect the African Union, how do you expect the people outside the continent to respect you? How do you expect the Indians to respect you? How do you expect the Europeans to respect you if you don't respect your own institutions? Give the power to the African Union. And this is what we have been crying, that the African Union is a toothless dog. If we are talking about African solutions to African problems, let the African Union have the absolute power to act and bring order across the continent. Let us have a single military. Let us have a single foreign policy. These are not out of the, out of the world ideas. Other nations are doing this. China has more than, 49 tribes. But how is it able to act? in unison. Europe has more than 27 countries. How is it able to act in unison? The United States has more than 50 states. How are they able to? So the idea that the language is a big issue, I think that rationality doesn't hold water in the face of the reality that we are facing today, that we have a lot of technology that has come around, that language is no more a barrier, to communication between people. So this is what we see, that one of the things that was achieved at this meeting, the Mo Ibrahim annual governance meeting, the interrogation of the fact that the African Union should have power to act on behalf of the Africans.
Thank you, Kwame, really, for that. A very good analysis based on the comment of President William Ruto. As you speak, as you give us that background and analysis, a lot of things came to my mind. I don't have any order, but I will just try to highlight or reflect on some of the things. Now that you said rightly, it's good that now themselves, the leaders, are realizing how humiliating it is for them to be summoned by one leader and, just go 54 leaders, state leaders, not only them, the whole their entourage. I don't know how in numbers, the cost of it,
it's wasteful. It's very wasteful. It's very wasteful.
It's something, it's very wrong. And also, as you said, if you add up the GDP of the whole the continent, and then that one country that summons the summit, it's something uncomparable, disrespectful act. So, so many people, who have the platform and reporting about Africa have reflected at different times about this. And we have talked almost every time when we get a chance to analyze this, that how we need that unity and to stick to the what Kwame Nkrumah said. He knew what he was talking about, although it seems impossible, to bring all of them together and be one. But also we don't have any option to face the rest of the world. So it was and also it is our only option to act in unity, to be unified and have one voice. And also I wonder, some things get attention and then just they are thrown out of the window, just like they decided now the African leaders to be represented, few REX regional leaders, and then the chairperson, the outgoing, and the chairperson of the commission, and then the chairperson of the union in this kind of summit. Also, I wonder what's going on with the United Nations Security Council, the idea that where so many African leaders individually talked about that, yes, African Union should have a seat in the UNSC, one of those permanent seats, but now we don't hear it. But it's also important to duplicate this, and it's time to bring that issue again. And for them, for us to hear that they have decided and they're pushing the question and or saying, no, we don't come, we don't participate, and we will see who is the loser. It's just easy. But now moving on, we, globally, our planet is going through change in terms of, I'm talking about power. I'm not talking about climate change or anything, but power.
Yeah, climate change is part. Climate change is part. Actually, climate change too was spoken about during this conference.
Okay. Yeah. So just to mention two things, what President Xi Jinping said when he met President Putin in Moscow, he said that word by word, we are seeing a change, a new changes coming, and it wouldn't have, we wouldn't have imagined it, as he said, we in 100 years. And the good thing about it is this change is that the change is led by us. I mean, he's talking, I'm not saying I'm not saying that, meaning of course in the front line, China, Russia and others, as opposed to the Western world. Now we are seeing also kind of Europe departing from the US, joining that, being a Trojan horse for US. We have seen Macron's comments in his during his tour to China, to The Hague, and yeah, we are seeing changes. Of course, Africa is part of the globe, and what happens in the world also impacts Africa, whether positively or negatively. But related to now, President Ruto's comment to say that the era of African leaders being summoned by one leader and an African leader is gone. Do you think it's part of that? Somehow it is connected?
Yeah, yes, to a larger extent, you would say that the various reactions of the different African leaders across the continent and their pushing back, their resistance to the advances of the US are reflective of that current changing world order. I mean, we have seen also countries like India, for example, even though India is considered a great ally of the United States in Asia, but we have seen that India also has been resisting the United States. It has resisted being pushed into the position of siding with the United States against Russia, because India sees that it has its own interests. So you can, in the same spirit, say that the African leaders, to a larger extent, also have noticed the changing world order and saw the need to push back. And people like Ibrahim, Mr. Mo Ibrahim, the business tycoon, as a representative of the civil society, he actually represents, or he's representing, that spirit of civil society, what we, majority of us who don't have a big say, who don't have a big stage like he has, want to say, our aspirations, our hopes and aspirations, actually, you can say they are being represented through what he's saying, asking questions. Why is it that the African leaders cannot work together? These type of questions, they are the ones which the common African is asking on the ground. And so if the leaders come to respond to these, actually, these are just answers to the aspirations of the common Africans. The common aspirations of the common African, or the common Black person living across the globe, is for Africa to be strong economically, politically, so that we can get that respect which we deserve across the globe. We are not getting that respect which we deserve because our leaders have chosen to be complacent in the project of keeping Africa weak. That is why we are not strong. So if leaders come out and civil society and respond to the cry of civil society, respond to the desire of civil society to make the continent strong economically and politically, of course, because there's no way you can make the continent, economically strong without making it politically strong. You have to first make it politically strong before you can even think of making it economically strong. So there is that recognition that the world is changing, and the normal, brutal colonizers and arrogant colonizers that have been pushing selfish agendas or pushing the colonial policies on the continent, are declining. There's that recognition. Of course, that recognition is everywhere across the globe. And I think that African leaders are also not left out. If you look at, for example, the things which Mo Ibrahim mentioned, he mentioned about the idea of harmonizing our policy, our security systems. These are things which you can say that they will give Africa more power. He mentioned about the idea of harmonizing our climate policy, to which, of course, President Ruto said that there's going to be an Africa Adaptation Climate Summit in Nairobi very soon, during which the African heads of state or the African countries will harmonize their policy, which they will present to the United Nations. Okay, and this policy will help to ward off the Europeans who have been harassing Africa, that Africa should adopt, to the climate change, and all those kind of policies should move in the direction of clean energy. And yet the Europeans themselves and the Western world, they are not moving in that direction. And so these are some of the things that were spoken about, like, for example, putting what he called a carbon tax, for example. Africa should advance its position also and make policy. This is how we want to do things. President Ruto also mentioned it, that this is how we want to do things. But how we want to do things is not enough for us to speak it to ourselves. It is important that when we recognize that the world is changing, the changing world order is here, we push our agenda. And I think that is important. It's good that he spoke about the Africa Adaptation, Climate Summit that is supposed to happen in Nairobi, very soon. I just happen to have forgotten the date, but it's happening very soon in the next few weeks. So it's important for us to have our harmonized policy and then present this to the United Nations, but also make it known to the world that do not come here and talk to us about this and this. For example, they spoke about the carbon tax. Africa is proposing there should be a carbon tax on all countries, those who are polluting the most. If the climate tax, the pollution, the allowed pollution, annual pollution that is allowed, for example, they mentioned is 3 tons. The countries like Europe and the United States and China, which are polluting and emitting more than 7 tons per human being, because Africa is polluting, is emitting less than 3 tons per human being. Actually, even in some cases, less than 1 ton. The United States is polluting more than 7. So they say that if the cutoff pollution level is 3 tons, then if you pollute more than that, you should pay for it per human being. You should multiply, if you are polluting like 6, you should multiply 3, the extra 3 times the population which you have, and you pay that money to the fund which is supposed to fight the climate change. And the African countries actually which are not emitting, they are the ones who should get that money. So this should be our policy. But that policy cannot be pushed if we do not harmonize it. And then we should hold, so that is a form of holding these people accountable. Because if you look at the Paris Climate Agreement, they committed themselves to $100 billion to support the Global South in fighting climate change. They never turned up to give this money. So this is a form of holding them accountable. We have to hold them accountable. So our policy, our harmonized policy as Africans, it should be for holding them accountable to the things they have said, but also us pushing our agenda as Africans. And that is the beauty of having this world changing order, changing world order, and recognizing that there's a changing world order as Africans. But more so, this changing world order should push us more closer as Africans to come together and harmonize our efforts as Africans. Now, Mo Ibrahim also spoke about the idea of mobilizing the civil society. I know, apart from us, is very few people, but here at Connect Africa, we have spoken about this issue on numerous times, the idea of mobilizing the civil society. So he mentioned that it is important to mobilize the civil society. Actually, he spoke especially on, for the African progressive leaders who are on the continent. They think that the continent should move in a unified direction, or, with a unified policy. So he said that these leaders, is important for them to mobilize the African civil society so that they can put pressure on the other leaders who don't want to move in that direction. They don't want the continent to move in that direction. So it is important. These are some of the things that he, he spoke about. And so I think that there is a recognition that there's a changing world order, and we as Africans need to start behaving differently. We need to start moving differently. We need to start speaking differently. We need to start acting differently. We need to start engaging with the world differently. And so the struggle now before us is to harmonize our policy as Africans. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for that. I think with that we have ended our session for today, which we did back-to-back. Two topics regarding the security meetings, African Union transition of mission in Somalia, ATMIS meeting, hosted by President Museveni, analyzing what is behind the closed door going. Is it only Somalia, or is there some other issue in the regions that needs to be discussed that brought these leaders, which we found also actually encouraging? And then the second topic was the Mo Ibrahim Governance Conference that was held again by another Eastern African country, Kenya, in Nairobi, where President Ruto and the Niger president was also there, and some international diplomats, including, of course, Africans, were there. But we focused particularly on the one-to-one meeting between President Ruto and Mo Ibrahim, and the viral video where President Ruto commented the era of African leaders being summoned by one non-African leader is gone. So we really did a deeper analysis on that, and relating it to also what's happening in the world, the new world order, or the new this change that we are observing, the geopolitical power, and the leaders being vocal in general, the global south. So those are our topics for today. We will meet again on Thursday with Kwame. We are here every Tuesday and Thursday with Kwame, and sometimes when there's something urgent, also Kwame comes. Other than that, when there's, for example, yesterday we had two guests from Sudan, one right from Khartoum, another one Sudanese based in South Africa, trying to tell us, we hear a lot by the mainstream media as to what's happening in Sudan and the conflict, who is fighting who, and but the real situation, what the people of Sudan are experiencing, needs to be heard. Their voices need to be brought up. They should be given a platform and hear what they say and try to help. This is Pan-Africanism. We in this generation, as part of this generation, should not and cannot allow. We cannot afford for Sudan to fall apart, to be another failed state in the continent. We cannot. Otherwise, all we talk about here is just meaningless. It's just nonsense. So we should do our part. It doesn't mean that we have the power. I mean, particularly me and Kwame, but we do believe if all of us who have the opportunity, who have the platform, talk about and gather that support for the people of Sudan, we definitely bring a change. So I think all our focus should be, all eyes should be on Sudan as an African. Of course, the Western world, their eyes on Sudan for their own reason, but we should be concerned more than we shouldn't see any intervention. So yeah, we should really take the matters into our own hands as a civil society organization, as a media platform, and as a Pan-Africanist. So please, please, if you have any suggestions or idea how to support the people of Sudan, as soon as this stream is finished, comment below in the comment section. Also, we have our email that we will put you in the comment section, so email us, and we see on Friday. We plan, I mean, it's tentative, but we plan to bring different professionals from Sudan, those who are in Khartoum, who are in the midst of the conflict, and also who were there and fled because of the war in different neighboring countries. We try to bring them and hear what they say, because they really want to support the people there in terms of medicine, food. You are seeing in the Western media, they like it sensational. They want to bring, I mean, this is what it brings you every day on your window in television while you sit in your living room. For example, you can take in Kenya recently, was it Kenyan or Nigerian? Correct me. There's this young man who invented a 3D printer and which can print multiple things at the same time. But you hear, nobody talks about it, but you hear on the other side one cult, religion cult in Kenya, where people starve themselves and until their days. That is now covering the whole mainstream media. So that's how the media is treating us. So we should stand up for ourselves. And yeah, I was saying on Friday we plan to do that, to bring different professionals from Sudan and hear what they say. Other than that, me and Kwame will see you again on Thursday. We will put also different petitions that needs to be signed. So when this live streaming is finished, please go and sign those petition and share them with your network, please. Your support in any way is welcome for us to be here, more days during the week. So Kwame, I give you 1 minute to say some closing remarks, and then that's
yes, I don't have much to say. I'm just saying that if you are African out there, go out and support any organization that is Pan-African. Support the people who are doing Pan-African work and concerned about our continent. Come to our channel here, support us, send a message, support the channel, share the messages, and invite other people to subscribe to the channel. That's the only way we will grow. If you have anything, $1, $2, anything you have, reach out to us, send a message in the comment section, and reach out to us, and we'll write back to you. Support us in any way so that we can be, to defend the cause of the African people. So with that being said, I want to thank you very much, everyone who has tuned in and has been watching with us. Thank you so much, and have a good night, good evening, and good day to you all, depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.